If you look at French politics over the last 40 years, it kind of looks like a giant pendulum, swinging back and forth, left, then right. But this isn't just about a list of presidents. Nope. It's really the story of a huge battle between two completely different ideas for what France should even be. So let's pull back the curtain on this massive ideological tug of war.
And that brings us to the big question, the one that's been hanging over French history for an entire era and is still just as important today. Which of these visions for France is actually going to win out in the end?
And here they are, those two big ideas. On one hand, you've got what we can call the protective state. Think of a France that wraps its arms around its citizens. It's all about social equality, the government running key industries, and having this really strong welfare safety net. But on the other side, you've got the competitive market model. This is a France that wants to be a fast, nimble player on the world stage, pushing for economic freedom, selling off state industries, and making big reforms to compete globally. This is the fight that's been swinging that pendulum for 4 decades.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Part 1, the Great Socialist Experiment. And it all kicks off with one historic election.
So, in 1981, that pendulum swings hard, really hard, to the left. François Mitterrand gets elected, and he becomes the very first socialist president of France's modern Fifth Republic. This was a political earthquake, a huge deal. And he showed up with a seriously ambitious plan to completely remake the country. And believe me, he did not waste a single second. Mitterrand's government just immediately started rolling out this wave of classic socialist reforms. They took over huge parts of the economy, like banking and energy, putting them under state control. They slashed the work week to 39 hours, they jacked up the minimum wage, and they poured a ton of money into healthcare and education. This was the protective state idea in full swing. But that dream pretty quickly slammed into a wall of economic reality. You got to remember, at this time, the US and the UK were going all in on free market capitalism, and France was sprinting in the exact opposite direction. The result? Well, the country's finances were strained to the breaking point, the deficit just exploded, and all these changes didn't really fix the deeper structural problems in the economy. The dream was colliding with the hard, cold numbers. So here's the fascinating part. Mitterrand had to change. His political journey is pretty incredible if you think about it. He starts with this massive socialist wave in '81, but by the middle of the decade, the economy forces him to completely switch gears and adopt austerity. We're talking deep cuts to government spending. And then, by 1992, he's a huge champion for Europe, helping create the modern EU. He went from radical to pragmatist, all in one presidency. And right on cue, that brings us to part 2, the center-right response. You guessed it, the pendulum was about to swing all the way back. So, in 1995, Jacques Chirac steps into the picture, and his entire agenda was a direct answer to the Mitterrand years. The mission was crystal clear: slash public spending and reform that very same welfare state the left had built up. The goal was to push France hard towards that competitive market idea. But the French people, they pushed back hard. Chirac's plans were met with some of the biggest strikes and protests the country had seen in decades. And this tells you something absolutely crucial about France. There is a deep, powerful, almost sacred attachment to the social safety net. The pendulum can't just swing wherever it wants. It has to fight against the massive weight of what the people want. So while Chirac was really struggling with these reforms at home, he actually found his defining moment on the world stage. His very public and very firm opposition to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, that became the cornerstone of his legacy. It made him incredibly popular, both in France and around the world, and it really cemented France's role as an independent voice in global politics. After Chirac, we get Nicolas Sarkozy in 2007, and this guy grabbed the pendulum and shoved it even further to the right. He was all energy, all action. He was laser-focused on liberalizing the economy, making the labor market more flexible, cutting government jobs, and slashing taxes. At the same time, he took a much tougher stance on issues like immigration and crime. And just like the presidents before him, Sarkozy had to become a major player on the world stage, especially when the 2008 global financial crisis hit and threatened to bring down the whole system. He was right at the center of Europe's response and was a key voice in making the G20, the group of the world's biggest economies, the main forum for dealing with the crisis. And that leads us to part 3, presidents confronting crisis. Because this is the moment where that old, predictable left-right pendulum starts getting rocked by forces way beyond its control. So the pendulum swung back left again with the socialist François Hollande in 2012. But his presidency wasn't really defined by economics. Instead, it was tragically and completely overshadowed by the horrific terrorist attacks in 2015. The Charlie Hebdo shooting, the attacks in Paris, the entire national conversation just shifted overnight to security, to identity, to what it means to be French.
All of this chaos created an opening for someone totally different. And in 2017, in walks Emmanuel Macron, a centrist who burst onto the scene. His big argument was that the whole left versus right debate was old and broken. He promised a third way, a pragmatic path to modernize France. He literally tried to stop the pendulum in its tracks and carve out a new center.
But man, his attempt to find that center was just immediately hammered by a relentless series of shocks. It was one thing after another. First, his big economic reforms lit the fuse for a massive social uprising. Then, right as that was finally starting to cool down, a global pandemic turned the entire world upside down. And that social uprising was the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests. It kicked off as a protest over a fuel tax, but it exploded into this huge, powerful movement against economic inequality, the insane cost of living, and this deep-seated feeling that the politicians in Paris were just completely out of touch with real people. It was this raw, primal scream from working-class France. And this gets right to the heart of the tension in modern France. Macron's big plan, making the labor market more flexible, cutting taxes for businesses, reforming the pension system, well, the business world loved it. They saw it as a necessary step toward that competitive market. But for the Yellow Vests and a lot of other people, those exact same reforms felt like a direct attack on the protective state, a giveaway to the rich that hurt ordinary folks. So, after all of that, where does this leave us? Well, that brings us to our final section, Part 4, the unresolved questions. Because here's the real kicker. After 40 years of this pendulum swinging back and forth, from socialism to liberalism and back again, France is still wrestling with the exact same fundamental problems it was facing at the very beginning of our story. And these challenges run deep. Economic stability is a constant battle with sky-high debt and unemployment that just won't go away. Social integration is still a major point of tension, with these endless debates over French identity, secularism, and how to build a multicultural society. And now, on top of all that, you've got the modern crises of climate change and figuring out France's role as a leader in a very complicated Europe. So, what's really at stake today is exactly what was at stake back in 1981. It's just got a new sense of urgency. How on earth does France balance the need for a growing economy with its deep commitment to social fairness? How does it heal its deep social divisions? How does it manage a transition to a green economy without leaving people behind? And what is its true place in the world today? These are the huge questions that no president, left or right, has managed to fully answer. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. After 4 decades of these dramatic swings between two powerful but ultimately incomplete visions for the country, the biggest challenge of all for France is whether it can finally stop the pendulum and find a stable, sustainable center that actually works for everyone.